Alright, let's step into the shadowy world of Gothic fiction, a genre that thrives on fear, mystery, and the supernatural. The term Gothic actually comes from Gothic architecture, that medieval style of pointed arches, high towers, and vast echoing halls, and yes, that connection to architecture has been asked in exam. So when we talk about Gothic fiction, we're really talking about stories that use medieval spaces, dark castles, secret passages, ruined abbeys as settings for horror and suspense. At its core, Gothic fiction is all about evoking chilling terror, using mystery, the supernatural, and psychological fear. That's exactly what the very first Gothic novel did, The Castle of Otranto, written by Horace Walpole in 1764. This novel is always the starting point, and it's been asked in exam countless times. After Walpole, others quickly followed. Clara Reeve wrote The Old English Baron, refining Walpole's formula, while Anne Radcliffe became the queen of the genre with novels like The Mysteries of Udolpho. Both names, Reeve and Radcliffe, are essential for exam recall. As the genre evolved, it began to shape the Romantic movement itself. Writers like Mary Shelley in Frankenstein and Walter Scott in his historical novels absorbed Gothic atmosphere and themes, and both have been asked in exam. You can almost feel the Gothic mood in those stormy landscapes and haunted minds. Then came the Victorian period, which gave Gothic fiction a new lease of life. Charles Dickens added Gothic touches to works like Bleak House and Great Expectations, while the Bronte sisters brought it to psychological depth. Think of the eerie isolation of Wuthering Heights or the mysterious secrets of Jane Eyre. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Edgar Allan Poe turned the Gothic inward, creating a dark, psychological version of horror in stories like The Fall of the House of Usher, another key exam reference, and Nathaniel Hawthorne explored guilt and sin through Gothic symbolism. Then, in the late 19th century, the Gothic truly exploded into popular culture. Bram Stoker's Dracula, published in 1897, remains the ultimate Gothic novel, immortal, literally and figuratively, and yes, a regular exam question. Around the same time, Robert Louis Stevenson gave us The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a masterpiece of dual identity and repressed desire. Interestingly, Gothic fiction also experimented with early vampire tales. Lord Byron's fragment of a novel from 1819, also known as The Burial, a fragment was one of the first English stories to feature a vampire, and that has been specifically asked in exam. Later, The Beetle by Richard Marsh even outsold Dracula for a while. By the 20th century, the Gothic had shifted towards psychological horror and domestic unease. Writers like Daphne du Maurier with Rebecca and Shirley Jackson with The Haunting of Hill House brought the genre into modern life. Anne Rice revived the Gothic vampire in her Vampire Chronicles, and her name too has appeared in exam questions, while Toni Morrison used Gothic elements to explore trauma and memory in novels like Beloved. And of course, the Gothic legacy continues today in the works of Stephen King, in modern psychological thrillers, and even in film and television. It's everywhere that fear meets fascination. So, to sum it up, The Castle of Otranto, the beginning of Gothic fiction. Anne Radcliffe and Clara Reeve, early masters of mystery and suspense. Frankenstein, Dracula, and Jekyll and Hyde, the Gothic at its height. And from Rebecca to Beloved, the Gothic spirit still haunts our modern imagination. Let's make Gothic fiction unforgettable with a few fun memory quotes. Code 1, Pole on Wall of Castle. There lives shallow Frank with Old English Baron Clara. Just picture Horace Walpole standing by his castle of Otranto, while Mary Shelley's Frankenstein lurks nearby and Clara Reeve guards the Old English Baron. Code 2. I turned the old manor house into Beckford Gothic. Here, imagine Charlotte Turner Smith hosting Gothic secrets inside the old manor house, while William Beckford's exotic imagination brews dark magic in Gothic. Code 3. Lewis the monk stands on the cliff of Udolpho. Think of Gregory Lewis's wild, shocking monk standing beside Anne Radcliffe's mysterious Udolpho with storms raging all around. Code 4. Caleb wins gold. That's William Godwin's powerful Caleb Williams exploring guilt, crime and justice in classic Gothic style. Code 5. Mature Melmoth. Finally, meet Charles Maturin's Melmoth the Wanderer, the ultimate doomed Gothic hero, cursed to roam forever. So, remember these little story codes, and the entire Gothic tradition will stay locked in your memory, haunted castles, mysterious monks and all. Alright, let's travel back to the 18th century and meet the man who practically invented Gothic fiction, Horace Walpole. Walpole was born in 1717, the youngest son of Robert Walpole, Britain's first Prime Minister. That fact has been asked in exam, so remember it. Educated at Eton and King's College, Cambridge, he grew up in privilege but also in a world of art, letters and politics. His parliamentary career wasn't particularly exciting. He attended regularly but made little impact, yet his influence as a writer and collector was enormous. He built his famous home, Strawberry Hill, in Twickenham, a real Gothic-style castle filled with curiosities, antique designs and mysterious corridors. That house actually inspired the setting of his masterpiece, the Castle of Otranto, and even the idea came from a nightmare he had there, a dream that, as he said, involved a giant mailed hand on a staircase. That dream origin has been asked in exam more than once. Walpole's other works include The Mysterious Mother, a tragic play on incest and historic doubts on the life of Richard III, where he questioned the reputation of the medieval king. But it's The Castle of Otranto, first published in 1764, that changed everything. He even added the word Gothic to its subtitle in the second edition, marking the birth of the Gothic novel, another core exam point. Now, let's dive into the story. The Castle of Otranto opens with sudden tragedy. Conrad, the son of Prince Manfred, is crushed to death by a gigantic helmet that falls from the sky on his wedding day. Yes, that giant helmet scene is one of the most famous Gothic images ever and definitely exam material. A prophecy foretells that the castle and lordship of Otranto shall pass from the present family when the real owner shall be grown too large to inhabit it. Fearing this prophecy, Manfred becomes obsessed with preserving his line. He decides to divorce his gentle wife, Hippolyta, and marry his son's fiancée, Isabella, a disturbing plan that sets the whole chain of horror in motion. Isabella flees through secret passages and underground tunnels, aided by a peasant named Theodore. Manfred orders Theodore's execution, but the hermit Jerome suddenly recognizes the young man as his own long-lost son. That twist of recognition adds a strong moral core beneath all the terror. Meanwhile, knights arrive at the castle led by Frederick, Isabella's father, claiming rights to the estate. Amid confusions, alliances, and ghostly omens, Theodore proves himself noble and brave. But tragedy strikes again when Manfred accidentally kills his own daughter, Matilda, mistaking her for Isabella in a fit of rage, a major plot moment that's been asked in exam. As the castle trembles, a giant apparition appears, the ghostly ancestor whose prophecy is now fulfilled. The walls collapse, the truth is revealed, and it turns out that Theodore is the rightful prince of Otranto. Manfred repents and retires in sorrow, while Theodore marries Isabella, bringing peace at last. So what makes this novel so important? Well, it establishes nearly every Gothic trope we know today: haunted castles, family curses, supernatural omens, hidden tunnels, fainting heroines, and moral redemption through suffering. Its big themes, fate, guilt, and the supernatural, have echoed through every Gothic work since, from Frankenstein to Dracula and even modern horror cinema. Walpole called his book a blend of ancient and modern romance. He wanted to combine the fantasy of medieval legend with the realism of modern fiction, and in doing so, he gave birth to an entire literary genre. So, when you see a crumbling castle, a stormy sky, or a cursed family secret in literature, remember, it all started with Horace Walpole's dream at Strawberry Hill and the shadowy halls of the Castle of Otranto. Alright, let's talk about one of the most extraordinary figures in English literature, Mary Shelley, the creator of Frankenstein. or the modern Prometheus. Mary Shelley was born in 1797, the daughter of two remarkable parents, William Godwin, the philosopher, and Mary Wollstonecraft, the pioneering feminist writer of A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. That parentage alone is an exam favorite. Sadly, her mother died just days after Mary's birth, and she was raised by her father, who encouraged her to think freely and question authority. Mary's childhood home was a hub of intellectual life, full of philosophers, radicals, and poets. But her own life was anything but easy. She had a difficult relationship with her stepmother, Mary Clairmont, and at just 16, she eloped to Italy with the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley. That event too has been asked in exam. The couple married in 1816 after Shelley's first wife died, and though they had several children, only one survived into adulthood. Now, let's move to the legendary moment that gave birth to Frankenstein. It was the summer of 1816, known as the Year Without a Summer, when volcanic eruptions had darkened the skies across Europe. Mary and Percy Shelley were staying by Lake Geneva with Lord Byron, Dr. Polidori, and Claire Clairmont. One night, Byron suggested a ghost story contest, and that's when Mary conceived the idea that would change literary history. This ghost story origin has been asked in exam. Her novel Frankenstein, published in 1818, is often called the first true science fiction story. It combines the mystery and darkness of Gothic fiction with the forward-looking curiosity of modern science. Mary was influenced by contemporary experiments in galvanism, where electricity was used to stimulate dead tissue, a cutting-edge scientific idea that inspired her vision of Victor Frankenstein bringing life to dead matter. The story itself is haunting and tragic. It begins with a series of letters from Robert Walton, an Arctic explorer writing to his sister about his voyage to the North Pole. This epistolary opening has been asked in exam. On his journey, Walton rescues a half-frozen man from the ice, Victor Frankenstein, who then tells his incredible story. Victor, a young scientist from Geneva, becomes obsessed with discovering the secret of life. In his laboratory, he creates a living being out of assembled body parts, but when the creature opens its eyes, Victor is horrified by his own work. He abandons it, and soon after, his life begins to unravel. News arrives that his younger brother William has been murdered, another exam question, and Victor realizes the killer is none other than his own creature. When the innocent Justine Moritz is executed for the crime, Victor is consumed by guilt. Later, on a glacier, the monster confronts Victor and tells his side of the story. We learn that he wasn't born evil, he became cruel after being rejected by everyone he met. Lonely and desperate, he begs Victor to create a female companion for him, and yes, that request is often asked in exam. Reluctantly, Victor agrees, but halfway through he destroys the second creature, fearing that a new race of monsters might emerge. Enraged, the creature vows revenge and warns Victor that he will be with him on his wedding night. Another line that's been tested in exam papers. The prophecy comes true. On the night Victor marries Elizabeth, the monster kills her. Victor's father dies soon after from grief, and Victor himself becomes consumed with vengeance. He chases the creature across mountains, deserts, and eventually into the Arctic, where he is found by Walton, weak, feverish, and broken. Victor dies shortly afterward, and in one of the novel's most moving scenes, the monster appears over his creator's body, mourning his own existence. He tells Walton of his endless suffering and vanishes into the icy wilderness to die. That closing image has been directly asked in exam. Frankenstein remains timeless because it's not just a horror story, it's a profound reflection on creation, responsibility, and alienation. It asks, what happens when human ambition oversteps its moral bounds? And that question still feels as relevant today as it did 200 years ago. Mary Shelley continued to write novels like The Last Man, also asked in exam, Lodore, Valperga, and Faulkner. She also became her husband's literary editor, preserving and publishing Percy Shelley's poems after his death in 1822. Her influence runs deep, not just in literature, but in philosophy, feminism, and even post-colonial theory. In fact, Gayatri Spivak, in her 1985 essay Three Women's Texts and a Critique of Imperialism, analyzed Frankenstein alongside Jane Eyre and White Sargasso, connecting it to the evolution of the white liberal feminist subject. That connection has been specifically asked in exam